Hey guys, Jeffries here, and welcome back to Cities in Motion 2. And on your screens right now, you are watching the Shogun line. Now, you might be wondering what the Shogun line is. Basically, Friday's episode, we built the Viking line, and the Viking line is very, very successful. And I remember saying in that episode that it was a prototype, and if it worked out, we'd start converting other metro systems in the network into this tram train hybrid, part of the helmet network. And the helmet abbreviation is going to have to change slightly because this system is no longer elevated. So I might have to have a little word with Alex about that and see if he's got another word that we can use for the L section of helmet. But this is the Shogun line. There's two lines in this section. There's the Shogun line and there's the Spartan line. And they both replace the Jade and Emerald lines. So what I'm going to do in this episode, there's no building in today's episode, so if building's what you want to see, then maybe you should skip to Wednesday or maybe even Friday's episode, because what I'm going to do today is give you guys a quick update on this series and also future series coming to my channel that are related to this series. And the main subject that I'm talking about there is Cities Skylines. Now, as I'm sure you guys know, Cities Skylines actually arrives tomorrow. It's released on the 10th of March. I was a fool and I didn't buy a pre-purchase copy because I didn't think I'd need it. Turns out that I could have had the game a week in advance if I'd actually bought that, but it was more money and I wasn't really sure about it, so I went for the normal pre-purchase copy, which means that I can't actually start playing it until tomorrow. I would try and get a video out tomorrow. I will do my utmost to get a video out tomorrow. Even if it lands quite late in the evening, I will still do my best to get it out. But I'm going to give you guys the quick lowdown on how this is going to work now, because I'm going to carry on playing Cities in Motion 2, even though Cities Skylines is going to be released. What I'm going to do is Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays is going to be Cities in Motion 2 days, carrying on with the format as before. Tuesdays, Thursdays and maybe also Fridays is going to be Cities Skylines days. And that way I can have both series running simultaneously without there being any crossovers and confusion and mishaps and anything going wrong. Hopefully you guys are on board with that idea. I think it's the best way of going about it. I've still got plenty of plans for this city, which is why I'm continuing to make these videos. But at the same time, the Jeffries Urban Planning Committee has had their first meeting, and Cities Skylines will be the perfect opportunity to actually explore my urban development strategies, let's say. I'm really looking forward to getting the game actually. I've watched a few people live stream it and I've come up with some really good ideas of how I can go about it, and I've also come up with a few ideas as to how I can use what I've learnt from Cities in Motion 2 to actually make my cities better in Cities Skylines. I have a really good strategy that I'd like to use. And if there's anyone out there who's watching this video and my Cities Skylines series who wants to follow my ideas, you're more than welcome to, providing they work, of course. I'd suggest that you stay tuned to my videos until you decide whether or not they actually work, just in case they don't. But yes, that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, really. It was just how I wanted the two series to run alongside each other, and this series is by no means dead. It's going to continue as ever. That's why we've got the Shogun line, that's why we've got the Spartan line, the Viking line, we've got a few other helmet lines in mind. At the moment I've just converted the North Island. It took a bit of work actually. The section that the tram's on now was the hardest bit, because this is where the city loop lines connect with the main network as well. So I had to do a little bit of rerouting of the North Island loops. You just saw a North Island train go past. That one bit was easy actually. That was just a little bit of track work needed doing. This section coming up here though is where it got tricky, because I actually had to separate the tram lines from the metro lines. That bit was the easy part. The difficult part was getting the pathways in and out. You can see here where the stations are built. At this point they're separated. They're about 2 or 3 grid lines away from each other. And even then that bit was fine. But you can see where the pathways split to go back up to the surface, and that bit was hard. especially as the metro tracks run on top of the tram tracks at this point. That made it an even bigger challenge. It got a little bit easier at the intermediate stations. So that was the main station. That bit was tricky because we had the little balloon station with the metro above. At this point here it got easier because I could run the two tram tracks alongside one another at this point. They're still single bore tunnels. They're not linked in any way, shape or form. But because they were running alongside the metro tracks, I could actually bring them up to just 2 below ground. So they're 8 meters below ground, and that means, you see there, the pathway was a heck of a lot easier to build. I linked them up at the ends of the platforms, and I also linked them up to one another. Sorry, that's what I was saying. I linked them up at either end of the platform, and then one of the ends goes up into street level. I might connect the other end up as well if demand is there. So that's them separated a little bit more. Here, they're basically running side by side, and this is my favourite part of the network actually, the way that the tracks work here. Actually no, I tell a lie, this is my second favourite part of the network. My favourite part is the way that I've integrated it into the MCH, because I thought that was quite a clever way of doing it. Basically, the metro hub hasn't been affected in the slightest by this conversion. And at the time of me planning this, I thought that there would be a huge upheaval going on. So I'm quite pleased with myself that I managed to do it in a way that didn't affect the actual metro hub that already exists. You will see a little bit more about how I've done that when this tram gets back round to the hub. Eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed it at the start as well, how I actually had it built. We had to get 2 sets of lines in and out of the hub. We also had to get a set of lines to and from the depot from the hub. And that's where it became a little bit complicated. We had a couple of lines snaking over one another. But it works. And it works at a point that 2 trams dispatch from the depot at virtually the exact same time. They both arrive at the platforms at the exact same time, and at the same time as they arrive at the platforms, 9 times out of 10 I would say this is true, a train coming in the opposite direction is heading back to the depot. So at no point do these trains get in each other's way. And that to me is a huge success, because that was the bit I was most worried about, was having 2 lines dispatched from the depot at the same time, and getting the timings right so that they don't get in each other's way. And I'm really, really pleased that that's worked out. And the way that these 2 lines are set up, once they're out on the main line, at no point do they get in each other's way in the slightest. They run very, very smoothly. And because there's no street level running, the only time that trams have to stop is at stops, or if people are crossing the streets to get to the stops, then they might have to slow down or stop there. But apart from that, they run exactly an hour apart for the entirety of the circuit. And just everything works brilliantly. I can't believe I haven't tried this idea sooner. It definitely works. And again, I credit Felix Train and Alex Ritchie for that, because Felix was the guy who suggested originally that I had trams running on metro tracks. JT Transport, who's now Electrostar Fan, I think his name is. He changed his name, so apologies if I've got that wrong. He was originally the first person to suggest about running trams on metro tracks. Felix Train suggested that I ran the trams for the Viking line on the outside, which is what gave me the idea for this system. And then, as I said, Alex Ritchie gave us the names, and again, more of the idea for the actual lines came from the name. So it all collided together into one big mishmash of ideas, which has eventually spawned what we've got here. And you can see at this station here is where the lines either separate or merge again onto the main network, and even that was done quite well. I've kept all the metro platforms in place at the old intermediate stops, just in case I do decide to run metro trains on the network again. At the moment it doesn't look very likely, and if I do run trains they'll be small ones. And even then it will take passengers away from the tram, so it will be very, very counterproductive. But I didn't want to rip out the entire network. I've left it almost in the same shape that I've left the Viking line and the trolley line. Apart from I did take the stations out of the trolley line, but I've kept it as 4-track throughout. I just, I like leaving relics in the city from time to time. Even if it's spur lines that are no longer used, or in this case platforms that are no longer used. It's more realistic. In London there's the famous thing of Aldwych Tube Station, which has been abandoned since I don't even know when, but it's an abandoned station on the London Underground network. Used to be on the Piccadilly line, I think. I'm speculating, but I think that's true. And now it's just an abandoned station, and hundreds of people visit it just to see an abandoned tube station. But, you know, it still exists. It's not like they close the gates and it just disappears into a cloud of smoke. There is still a structure in place. You can't just get rid of a building underground like that. It's not that easy, because whatever you do, there'll still be a huge hole underground where a building used to be. And that's kind of what I want to represent here as well. Just because a line's been shut doesn't mean that the station just suddenly disappears. It still exists. You know, the platforms are still there. The entrance and exit building would still be there. You could block the stairs off, but everything underneath is still in existence. So yeah, I wanted to represent that, which is why I've left the platforms in place. The only time where it goes down to double track is for the express platforms here, and this is the only point where the express trains and the tram trains directly interchange. Apart from this stop here, the other two express platforms are actually where the tram lines diverge from the main lines. So again, that was a unique challenge, was making sure that that all worked properly. There are some stations where it was very, very easy to get the pathways up to surface level, and there were a couple of stations where it was an absolute nightmare. And this station here, I think, was the easiest one to do, because apart from the buildings that we lose at surface level, we could just build pathways from 3 of the 4 corners up to surface level. And that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. The best example of station design is on the Viking Line, and it's that station where the tracks are only 2 above ground level, and all 4 corners are connected up to junctions, and just everything about that station, it looks good and it works fantastically, and it's something that I wanted to recreate here. I wasn't able to do it with every single station, but the ones where I got close, they do work very, very efficiently. And there's a couple of stations coming up here actually where, in fact it's this station here where the tracks diverge again. This was the hardest one to do, because we have all the metro tracks that diverge and join up, plus the city auto lines that run underneath. And we had to put the tracks in such a way that they would connect up and diverge with good looking curves to start with, efficient curves so that the trains don't have to slow down to go round them, but also we needed to get the slopes in the right places so that the tracks, because you'll see here as this tram leaves, it leaves above this metro section, it goes above the lower half of the MCH, but it goes underneath the upper half. And then it has to curve round in such a way that it goes underneath the city auto lines and the metro. Wait, no, that's not the metro, that's the other helmet line. In fact, now's a good time to explain how I've done this. So I'm going to leave this tram because it's going back to the depot. We have 2 sets of platforms here, and I'm really pleased with how this works. This is a bit like how the Victoria Line platforms work in London. So this platform here is the Spartan Line arrival. This platform here is the Shogun Line arrival. This platform here is the Shogun Line departure, and this platform here is the Spartan Line departure. So the arrivals of the Shogun is level with the departure of the Spartan Line, and vice versa. And the reason that's been done, these platforms here, so the departure for the Shogun Line and the arrival for the Spartan, I built these ones first, under the assumption that I'd be able to link up the track to this point here. As it developed though, the idea developed, and I realised this metro track was just not going to be able to be moved. In fact, this is city auto tracks. Definitely wouldn't be able to be moved because everything about this city auto station worked perfectly, and I didn't want to interfere with that by moving tracks around and things like that, because it took me quite a while to get these tracks in place in the first place. So the only option then was to actually have this arrival line dip underneath here, and I was very pleased that I managed to get it through that gap. That was a big hurdle for me. And then underneath the city auto lines, because I was underneath the city auto lines, the only option then was to curve around underneath the existing helmet line and then up into a new set of platforms built parallel to the old ones. And at that point it became very, very easy to actually connect these up, because you do connect them at the end, like I've already said with the other stations on the network, and then from here you just build spurs to the city auto platforms. And I am considering building connections on this side of things, see there's the trolley line. The actual helmet tracks go above the trolley line as well, which was also good. I didn't realise how far underground these platforms actually were, so I was relieved when I was able to build a straight line over the top without them getting in the way at all. So I got quite lucky with a lot of this, but I guess in the back of my mind when I was building all these hub lines, I did have the ideas of potential expansion and where would the tracks go and where would the platforms go. So I stumbled onto these ideas by accident almost, but I'm really happy that that's how it worked out, because it made it a flawless system when it came to expanding. And now we have this fully working system that was just integrated into the old system anyway. I was saying, yes, I'm going to have some pathways come out this side and connect up either here, maybe here on Wood Avenue, just because it's in the centre of the MCH. The other option is to have it connect up to the avenues here, so Kingway and Concord Road, which that's a quite nice name actually, Concord Road. I imagine there'll be a street called Concord Road in Bristol somewhere. That's where Concord was developed, on the English side anyway. I don't know where it was in France. But in England it was developed in Bristol, so I imagine there'll be a street somewhere in Bristol called Concord something. But that's me digressing. What was I wanted to say? That's basically it really. Cities Skylines, I've covered that. The new parts of the helmet network, I've covered that. You can see here how the trams dispatch. So there's the one for the Shogun line, and here's the one for the Spartan line. You see they diverge. There's a Spartan line train returning, and somewhere around here will be a Shogun line train if it hasn't already gone past. And it just works. The fact that this system is as big as it is, it does a lap of the entire North Island, but I'll show you here, we only need 20 trains to actually cover the entire network. I've bought 21 just to be on the safe side, and it also means that trains swap networks. So one minute they're on the Shogun line, the next minute they'll be on the Spartan line. But you know, the few vehicles needed for a line this big is quite good, and it shows how efficient the network actually is. We have some quiet platforms, we also have some busy platforms. The quietest platforms, I would say, are actually up here on the northern end, and that's because the city loop, which is over here, their stations still exist. So I think they take passengers off the trams up until these endpoints where passengers will go back down onto either the trams or the express lines to get back to the hub. The busiest station that I've found, you might have already seen, is this one here. This platform, for some reason, on the Shogun line, just gets loads and loads of people waiting. And I think it might be because it connects with the trolley line, and it also connects with the bus. In terms of the pathway, it only has one connection point, and that's up here. And that's connecting with this bus line here. So I don't actually know where these people come from, but they do appear, and they do go down to the tram. So again, you know, I can't really complain. It's good to see it working. These stations over here, these platforms are very quiet, and I think that's because of the difficulty in actually... We have a connection to the City Auto line, and again, I was lucky that that was available, and that's our only connection to ground level apart from this one here. But this one just goes onto a quiet street. The best connection point is down here with the City Auto lines. But apart from that, I mean, this is the ugliest station as well because of the way it's all had to be developed. You see how far apart the actual platforms are, and they're on relatively sharp curves. This one's probably the best looking of the two because it's on a nice curve, but then the tracks actually approaching it, they're up and down all over the place, and they're sharp curves, and there's a little bit of a kink going on under there as well, so it's not the best looking thing, but it works. The trams do have to slow down. The biggest point where they have to slow down is actually this curve here, because it's a very sharp 90-degree curve to get it into the right platforms, to get it all aligned up. That was the last bit I built, and I actually built it in from this direction, so I had to go sharp left and then a smooth right to connect up here. Passengers aren't on board the trams at that point anyway, so it's no biggie, but you can see here this tram kindly demonstrating the outside track. It's not too bad, it can run at a reasonable speed. But if there was a tram to come down this way now, you'd see how much it has to slow down to go around that corner. But because there's no passengers on board, and because it's the first stop on the line, the timetable applies for that, and that train is the one that's released first. So it all works out. The tram still arrives on time, even though it has to slow down. In terms of the MCH as a whole, it's actually running quite nicely now. We still have the old trolley queue and the old bus queues, but as a whole, it looks good. And now I've got a couple of lines here connected, I can start working on other bus lines to connect up parts of the city, because we still have some buildings over here, these ones for example, which aren't covered by any line. So that's the next project, is to build bus lines to connect all of these parts of the city and have them running in and out of the MCH. We've got the depots in place. This is the old bus depot from the Cypress Creek, Birch Grove and Piccadilly Circus lines. So we've got those to use up. Plus 2 other depots which aren't connected up yet. And I might even be able to cram another bus depot in at the end of this junction here. So there's still plenty of bus options available. We could possibly even get some more tram lines running. We've got a couple of avenues which don't have tram tracks on, this one here for example, which won't become part of the City Auto line. They will be separate, dedicated tramways. And there's another one up here as well which runs parallel to the monorail for a stage. And then at this point it goes into the Alizarin North, that's the one, which is also starting to become quite popular. I would say the most popular stops on the entire network are actually over here. This tram stop on the Cardinal line, I don't know what it is about the Cardinal line that's so popular, but for some reason we have hundreds and hundreds of people at any one time waiting at this stop. I'm guessing it's because there's connections to the monorail. No, there's 4 monorail stops that are connected to this one tram stop. The tram stop in the other direction is here, and maybe it's just out of range. I don't really know. But I don't see many people waiting for trams in that direction. There's also a popular tram stop over here, running into the city. No, wait, sorry, that's running in the same direction. So maybe it's just the direction, because it goes into the city centre. I don't know. This one goes the other way, so it's really confusing as to why it's so popular. But it is popular. Other popular stops? It is mostly trams. If I'm honest, it is mostly trams. Trams Square is definitely picked up in popularity now. I don't know whether that's because I've rejigged the lines, or the Cologne Cathedral helped out. I don't 100% know. I'm not really going to experiment to find out, because I'm quite happy with how this works now. I'm very happy with the fact there's no traffic lights, and I'm also very happy that trams only run through the tram square once. So there's no queues, there's no mix-ups, everything works perfectly. And in fact, I'm going to leave this episode with a nice view of Tram Square, because we have come to an end. This was only meant to be a short episode, just to fill you in on what's been going on, and I've ended up rabbiting on for 20 odd minutes now. So I think now as any is a good time to end. So, covered the basics. Cities Skylines will be coming out from tomorrow. Cities in Motion 2 will be continuing on Wednesday and Friday as usual. Apart from that, that's about it really. That's the main news that I wanted to share with you guys. So, until tomorrow, hopefully. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, be sure to click the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to my channel, thank you guys for your continued support. Don't forget to leave this video a like if you enjoyed watching, and until next time, I will see you soon.